Perfect. All right, everybody, thank you for being here. Can you hear me? Is the mic loud enough? Projecting? Perfect. Really excited to have everybody here. Last panel of the day. What is influence in a world where everyone's an influencer? We have an esteemed panel of people in the creator and influencer space. Really kind of the topic here is we want to talk about the concept of influence and how it's evolved dramatically with the social media landscape, and really the fact that now and where we are with people's access to creating content, it's a lot more democratized. So I'm Morgan Wilkinson. I'm a director of creative strategy at Group Black. And I also sit on a lot of our content initiatives and working with a lot of our talent. And here with me today, we have Brandon Smithwick from Kickstarter. We have Olivia Owens from Teachable and Danielle Ito from from Notion. I'm going to let them both introduce themselves. And starting with Brandon.
Sure. Hey, everyone. My name is Brandon Smithwick, head of content at Kickstarter. First, what is Kickstarter? I'm pretty sure people have heard of it. We are a go-to crowdfunding platform for any creative idea. So if you have a film, you have a book you want to launch, or even if you have a technology product, you can crowdfund it instead of bootstrapping or taking out a loan or taking any VC money. So I sit across social media, editorial, working with creators to kind of amplify their stories, but I'm also a creator myself. So we'll probably get into that too.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. My name's Olivia Owens. I lead creator partnerships and business development at Teachable. Teachable is a platform for creators to monetize their knowledge, whether that be through digital products like courses, downloads, community, membership. And so we work with creators to take that influence and ground it in educational content that they can monetize.
Hi, I'm Danielle Ito. I lead influencer at Notion. And if you're not familiar, Notion is an all-in-one organizational tool for your notes, workflows, docs, things like that. We're not traditionally a creator platform, but we've been very fortunate that a lot of content creators use and love Notion to power their workflows. So our amazing influencer program has kind of grown out of that. I've been in this space for around 6 years, and yeah, just growing a creator program at Notion now.
Perfect. So I think to ground this conversation, I want to make sure, my favorite line is words mean things. And in this industry, there are a lot of words and a lot of terms for things, and sometimes they're used interchangeably. On TikTok and really in the industry, there's been a lot of debate on the usage of the word creator versus influencer, right? And so I want to talk with you guys about what is a distinction for you between the word, like an influencer and a creator, and how do you see that evolving? It's open-ended.
We're having this conversation backstage. I think that every influencer is a creator, but not every creator is necessarily an influencer. And I think influencer is a very strong societal definition these days. It's a very popular term that people just associate with like a social media star. But I do think it is very limiting to actually the work that goes into being an influencer. So yeah, I think a creator is a much more encompassing term of really a lot of different creatives. If you're building something, if you're creating something and putting it out there, you are a creator. And I think influencer, again, is kind of just a niche term that people like to refer to as someone with a social media presence. But I don't think you need to be, a social media star per se to be a creator.
I agree. We were talking about this backstage. And I was also thinking, like, when did influencer stop being like a good word where people kind of really shifted towards a creator? And I was reminded of literally the debacle of Fyre Fest. Like, I remember sitting in the office when all this was going down and people were like, whoa, this is a shit show. Sorry for language.
We're all done.
But it was kind of driven by all these influencers advertising and promoting something that they did not know about and kind of using their platform recklessly. And then we saw what happened. And I think ever since then, like, there was a stain on this word influencer. And I agree, I think creator is more now this PC term, but it is more encompassing. I think when we also think back to influencer, we thought of like maybe Instagram, they're a tastemaker, they're curators, they have massive followings. And over time, we kind of learned that all because you have a good following or a massive following doesn't mean your audience is really engaged with you. So I do think creators kind of win there because at a certain point, brands are like, we just want good creative. We just want content that performs. So even if you don't have the biggest following, you have the most kind of engaged community, and that's what we really want.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think in our world, a lot of our creators actually think of themselves as entrepreneurs. I think that's how they identify first. And a lot of the conversation we have with them is how do you think about yourself as a business? The majority of creators right now are monetizing via brand deals, but for longevity and also stability, being able to diversify and having multiple revenue streams is going to be critical. And so starting to go even beyond influencer to creator to entrepreneur, I think is going to be kind of the next wave.
Yeah, definitely. And I think when we're thinking of the data, right, it's like, what is influence and what are you driving your community to do? And that's really the goal for creators and influencers. Perfect. All right. So I'm going to kind of speaking more on that and Brandon, but really anyone can answer this one. Can you talk about how the commoditization of influence affected your content strategies or are affecting your content strategies and the ways that you engage with your potential creators and backers on Kickstarter? And I think that's definitely a good question for really all three of you.
Sure. I think the interesting thing, again, about Kickstarter is like we play in every single sand bucket in terms of creativity. So, and kind of to Danielle's point, not all creators even identify as a creator. If you are a tech creator who makes a project, you probably don't call yourself a creator. If you are a filmmaker, you probably don't call yourself a film creator. But when we think about like the audience that these creators really build, I do think they're primed to like launch a product. You have a very leaned in audience who you've built trust with. You kind of know their needs. And a lot of times what we see at Kickstarter is a lot of creators will come here to kind of de-risk whatever they want to launch. So if I am a YouTuber, but I want to now make a feature film, I can just crowdfund it versus taking any kind of other money. There's this one YouTuber we worked with who she does YouTube about productivity and hacks of how you can kind of optimize your space. And she had this idea for a foldable hanger because a lot of us in New York live in such tiny apartments and we have no space in our closet. So instead of a hanger, which kind of comes out a little bit far, where we can fold the hanger and we can optimize space, she raised almost $500,000 and sold, I think, 2,000 kind of units of these foldable hangers just in bundles. So she was able to go into R&D, go into production, kind of de-risk, right? I don't have to worry about what should I pre-order. My community is already telling me the demand, and now I can launch this product with a little bit more confidence. And what that really told me is that for creators, we need to show them the value of launching a product-based business, because again, being a creator might have a short lifespan. Being an entrepreneur is your next stage.
Yeah, I would say the conversation with creators is always about ownership, right? It's like you can't rely on the platforms. You've got to make sure you have your email addresses, all of that. And I think even with AI as well and trying to maintain the humanity of the experience that you're creating for your audience, creators are thinking about how do I create my own world for the community that I've created that I can engage with them in a deeper way. And I think that that can come to life in many different ways. That can be through a product on Kickstarter or through a membership community. And I think the more that creators can control how they engage with their audience, the less they're going to be reliant on the algorithms and the attention economy and be able to create a space where they can build those deeper connections. And I think they need to get comfortable with the idea of monetizing their audience as well, because that is a group that wants to give you their money. I think we're far past the time where audiences feel a type of way about a creator getting money from either promoting a product or buying a product directly from them. And so I think it's time to jump 2 feet in on that and create structures that create the recurring revenue structures that creators need and allow that deeper engagement that audiences are hungry for.
Yeah, I actually don't think I realized how all of us kind of touch what I think is really going to be the next wave of influencer or creator marketing, the next trend in creators building these communities. At Notion, we have a unique, I guess, point of sale is a lot of creators, whether they have a social media presence or not, sell Notion templates, and it's incredible. You know, there are creators out there who make up to $1 million a year selling Notion templates, kind of in the same vein of a Teachable course. You know, this is a resource that they're offering, say, you know, a film creator creates a template on their production schedule. They share that with other aspiring film creators. Or I just worked with a creator who is a private chef in the Hamptons. So she did a private chef template for other private chefs. So again, these are resources I think that, you know, audiences come to creators to watch their content because they're engaged. But I think in the next, you know, wave of this social media trend, as more and more creators come about, I think really offering that resource is going to be the next tangible piece of value that audiences will get from these people.
I agree. And really quickly, I also wanted to say, if you're on the brand side of things, what you need to be thinking about is how do I embed myself into whatever the world these creators are going to be developing. It's not just how do I get them to do a sponsored post for me. It's like, how do we deeply embed ourselves into those communities to also, as the brand, create the authentic connection with those audiences.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And thinking about virality and like for the creators, how they then use these platforms to continue a more like more longevitous career. But then for brands, how can they actually help these creators, right? That's that partnership. That's my speech. But then I'll get back to my questions. All right. Well, Danielle, so you were just talking about how creators are using Notion. So what criteria are you guys using at Notion to identify influencers or creators who will have a meaningful and lasting impact on your audience?
Yeah, I think the probably standard answer here would, of course, be a follower count or engagement rate. But I think we are fortunate to be able to have a strategy that's actually rooted in trying to get as many use cases out on the internet as possible. So I really do look for creators who, have a strong use case, something that's interesting, unique, they're passionate about the product, or they're maybe not even super familiar with Notion yet, but they're passionate about the work that they're doing and they want to, offer their community something that they think will better their lives. So whether it's a student influencer who's sharing their study method or, again, like a travel influencer who wants to share an itinerary with the world, I think something that's important for me is trying to nail in on all these different use cases. And something that I've been trying to work on a lot this year is actually nailing down on niche communities that have a raving fandom, similar to the way that people love Notion. So yeah, there are some interesting communities that I've tapped into, like Dungeons and Dragons creators. Chess is another one I really want to get into because I know there's a lot of excitement and people feel so passionately about these hobbies or these activities that they're doing. I think that there are always ways that we can fit in Notion to them. So that's a really, I think pairing Notion with one of these like loves or passions or hobbies you have in your life is a really easy way to get people initially onto the platform. And it's been pretty successful for us.
Yeah, and I mean, I'd love to hear from both of you if you guys have thoughts on that too. I know with both Teachable and Kickstarter, there's definitely a exploratory stage where you're chatting with people and understanding how they could benefit your platforms. If you have thoughts there.
Yeah, what I was thinking about as Danielle was speaking was kind of the same thing. I was put on to Notion, kind of like a referral. My boss used it, and he was showing me kind of how he keeps track of all his OKRs, all his planned tasks. And I was like, wait, what is this? And he's not monetizing, but I feel like, he really should, because he put me on because I've used Notion. I put my community on. I've done everything from here's how I do brand deals, and like I'm gonna have a Notion tracker for brand deals. Here's a tracker kind of for your day to day. Like I have one Notion board that's like all my goals, professional, financial, spiritual, personal. Then even have a vision board. Like people love that, but it's just a low barrier way. But one other thing Danielle touched upon is kind of like these super niche communities. Because I will agree that we're seeing more ROI there than anything else. I'm going to New York Comic Con next week, but even within like the Kickstarter space, comics do insane, games do insane, like tabletop games. We were just at a conference in Germany talking about like tabletop games because people who are so embedded within a community, they are seeking other like-minded creators. So when all of these other brands top level are going after lifestyle and fitness and fashion, I actually think some brands need to tap into what are the sub-communities because you'll see a higher adoption rate.
One of my favorite card games of all time was actually backed on Kickstarter, so.
The Card Against Humanity?
No, Exploding Kittens.
Exploding Kittens, yes, that was also.
I love a cat.
Highly recommend.
Sounds like what I need.
I love it. I agree on the niche communities front. Like the top sellers on Teachable, one is a yoga school, one is teaching how to fly drones, one's a pilot academy. Like it's super niche. And when I started at the company, I also came from a crowdfunding platform, funny enough, and watched these entrepreneurs want to build these businesses and not be able to get access to the capital to bring them to life. And then going to Teachable and seeing these creators have built $1 million businesses off of not massive audiences. And that was the most confusing thing to me. These weren't creators with millions and millions of followers. These were creators with deep niches and authority, and therefore they could do higher priced products for the audience that they created. So I definitely think niche is important. I think when you're talking to creators though, like they measure everything based on time. right? It's like they're doing a consistent time cost analysis of like, is this going to give me the return on my investment? Brandon knows this very well, being a creator. And so I think we also need to figure out like, how do we make it make sense for them, whatever we're trying to work with them to do? And when we structure our partnerships, we think beyond just like a sponsored post. We're thinking like, can they do some SEO optimized blog posts for us? Can they host challenges for us? I think from a Kickstarter perspective, if a brand teamed up with a creator to like be the first backer of the campaign or provide a reward, like I think there are really unique ways that brands can get involved and kind of power what creators are trying to do. And that's going to give you the loyalty and interest and excitement from their audience to show that you're willing to invest in this creator that they care about.
Just one thing also to add on to that point, because I do love seeing brands think like creators. And of course, we see that on the social side where a brand has a face of the channel and they just say, hey, go on Hinge, like just do whatever you want. And there's so much personality now injected into the brand. But something else, as we were speaking, that kind of reminded me was we recently did a project with L'Oreal, who does not need any crowdfunding help at all. But they wanted to invite their community in on the process of bringing a new idea to life. So they had this technology product called the Color Sonic, where it's basically a hair coloring tool. You would insert cartridges, you just roll it through your hair, and you can just color your hair automatically. And that's so innovative. There's nothing like that out there. They premiered it at CES, but then launched a crowdfunding campaign on Kickstarter to kind of launch this because they wanted their community to say, hey, versus just like shopping online, hitting add to cart, and now you're converting, you're gonna get your shipment in like 35 days. They wanted to like have a crowdfunding campaign for 30 days saying, hey, let's reach this funding goal. And it's kind of like your community champions your success. And that's something else like we've been seeing at Kickstarter where like brands are now coming to us to like really foster new ideas.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like the entrepreneurial spirit is like important, and that's literally what the creator economy kind of has really brought to the forefront. And speaking of you being a creator, and I think we're all creators, I post a little TikTok every once in a while that nobody watches. But I think thinking about that and us being in this space, I'd love to chat more about like the duality of being a creator yourself and then also working with creators and how that really affects, you know, your day to day. And this is really open-ended, but starting with Brandon.
Yeah. Not easy. Don't know why I'm doing it. But I kind of started my creator journey about 2 years ago. And I think a lot of times when people think of creators or influencers, you're thinking of specific platforms. I'm thinking about TikTok. I'm thinking about YouTube. I'm thinking about Instagram. But like we're all in the business space. And I'm actually a LinkedIn creator. Which is a relatively new term. Some people call it a B2B influencer. Some people just say, well, no, you're just more of a thought leader. But being a creator kind of on LinkedIn is very interesting for me because I just started talking about things I saw within the space in social media, in content, things I wish brands would do. When we're talking about brands creating community, I'll just write a post like, why are more brands using close friends? Like that's, the green bubble goes all the way to the front and stories is right on the top nav. You as a brand will add all your insiders and your advocates to close friends. Genius idea. And like that just took off. And then doing more partnerships with brands like Amazon, like Notion, like Dropbox, all just kind of just share information and insights with this community of engaged marketers, entrepreneurs, solopreneurs. But along my own creator journey, it's been a balance because I'm still within the industry. At the same time, I'm doing it because, you know, I never got trained traditionally on like, here's how you do digital marketing. Here's how social media works. I just figured it out. So my kind of community was built based because I just wanted to help other people who are just figuring it out because if you work in social media, it's like the wild, wild west. But I think like most creators will tell you, they just kind of fell into it.
Olivia?
Yeah, I mean, I was talking to Brandon about this at an event earlier this week. Like, it is a no-brainer to sit on this side of the table and want to be a creator. Like, when I'm signing their deals, I'm like, yeah, I should be doing this.
Have that thought every day.
Exactly. But I think Brandon brings up a really interesting point with LinkedIn and going back to the conversation about niches, those B2B creators are a really interesting niche that we're looking at right now. I think when you balance the spectrum between like entertainment creator versus education creator. Entertainment creators oftentimes have like the really, really big audience, but can you get them to buy something? Maybe not as much. Education creators kind of smaller audience, but again, can make big numbers. I think an interesting thing with this B2B creator is On LinkedIn, you are building your audience legitimately based off of your authority, and people want to learn from you. And that's why it's such a natural path for a platform like Teachable to work with creators like Brandon, because it's like, Brandon, you've built this authority for yourself. Your audience wants a course from you, wants a digital download from you, all of that. And so it's a really nice kind of audience for Teachable to tap into. And I think we're seeing more brands start to market and do creator partnerships on LinkedIn. And I'm shooting to have my first creator partnership for myself on LinkedIn soon.
Yeah, you should
I love
email me.
that. All right.
Yeah, I think we were really lucky. We started LinkedIn influencer marketing 2 years ago, which was pretty much right as it was starting to grow. And I think we all know the growth on LinkedIn has been insane. And I've seen some really awesome creators like Brandon come out of this boom on LinkedIn. And I think going back to content as a resource, I think the beautiful thing about LinkedIn is that people are really sharing their insights in a way that they weren't before. There's like no more gatekeeping. And I also think LinkedIn is a very brand safe space where people, are nice to each other, but also feel, empowered to engage with people that they don't know and actually share their insights in the comments. The discussion on LinkedIn, I feel like, is much more impactful than like on a TikTok. It's not just like, love this, or like, where'd you get your sweater? It's, asking questions, sharing advice, tagging other people who might benefit from the content as well. So yeah, I think LinkedIn has been a really fun place to see also the text, content grow as well. I feel like that's kind of been a lost form of art recently. I know Substack is growing. Been thinking about starting a Substack, so that's my goal for the year. But I think, it's been pretty cool to just see people share their advice and quotes and on LinkedIn, and it's been really cool. And we have seen a lot of success on LinkedIn as well, I think too, because going back to the niche communities, your posts also go pretty far within networks. So it's been easy for us to reach, these niche B2B communities, whatever they may be.
And one other thing I want to add there is when we think about even like the title of this panel, like what is an influencer what is influence when everyone's an influencer? Because we do live in this no gatekeeping society now. So even when you look at TikTok, right, they lowered the bar for entry for anyone to be a creator. And not everyone's gonna be like a Keith Lee and can post something and shut down a whole restaurant. But we all look at restaurants, like we're in New York, hey, where should I go? And we're going to essentially these people to influence our decisions. And TikTok's even leading into this when you open the app and everything now is TikTok shop. Everything now is like commercialized, trying to get you to convert and always just I fall victim to it. Can't lie.
I just bought a neck like 20 minutes ago.
But we kind of see this going also on LinkedIn when we saw the downfall of Twitter or X, right? There was a rise in LinkedIn where everyone said, cool, I'm leaving this platform. I'm not gonna go here to share my thoughts. And we kind of just saw this uptick. And at the same point, you're kind of seeing this where, hey, either you can join in the conversation and kind of use your influence or gain some influence or just topical authority. But I just found that really interesting when essentially no gatekeeping is the reason why everyone now is an influencer or can spark some level of influence.
Yeah, no, totally. And I think being in the industry, at least the excuse I tell myself when I'm making a TikTok or something is if I'm going to be in this world making insights based on social because of something I read in an article, why not actually see what it's like when I post about a restaurant? I think it's being a practitioner, and every industry does that. I think moving on, thinking more about that in the future, right? So what trends are we seeing that are going to shape the future of the influencer and creator economy? I know we talked about creators as entrepreneurs and looking at more niche communities. What are some other things that we think businesses can take as advice to stay ahead as this economy is kind of ever changing?
Yeah, I think for me, when I approach a partnership, I never want it to feel overtly salesy or overtly this was sponsored by Notion. I have to for FTC guidelines, but I think when creators are telling a story that's really authentic and organic to the content that they're already creating, and we're just there to help support them, achieve whatever the end goal of their video is, that's when the content really resonates the most and it performs the best. I never want a piece of branded content to be, stand out amongst the rest of their feed because it doesn't fit. I think too, one of the true core beliefs about creator marketing that I believe in is that the creator really should be leading the content. So I think really having that partnership, when brands have that partnership with the creator, let them decide how the content should live without giving them strict brand guidelines and key messages, I think that always makes the content resonate a lot more. So yeah, and I think this kind of goes back to the ethos of Notion too, is, we're really trying to help support creators build their businesses, build better workflows to manage their work, because it is a lot of work and there's no school for being a creator. So yeah, I think those are kind of the main pillars that I live by.
I definitely see a trend where brands are now leaning more on creators to tell an authentic story. On the personal side, I see posts like tank when a brand says like, post this asset. I'm like, but that's not really like leveraging that creator in the best possible way, because it actually shows a little bit of distrust. You rather trust your own creative than this creator who knows their audience the best and knows what's going to resonate with that audience. I also think on the other side, I think a lot of brands are going to start using creators who cultivate community. Because I do think there's this one touch point, right, where, hey, you have great content, or hey, we can use this content for a Spark ad, or hey, this is like an elevated UGC, or we're able to have massive reach. But when you're able to now use this creator's community IRL, and you're now like plugging into where their community comes, or even these creators who now have like online communities like a Geneva, like a Slack, like a Discord, and your brand's now injected into that, I think that's every brand's goal. Like years ago, I used to say like, how do we get our brands in someone's DMs? Like, how do we get people like sending their friends, hey, did you see this about this brand? Or like, hey, have you seen this product? Like brands want to be talked about in ways that they can't even measure. And I do think we're going to see a trend where brands are trying to figure out how do we tap into creators who are actually creating community and creators who have digital communities that are massive.
Yeah, I've actually, sorry about that note, we've been doing a lot of that work. And also it's from a brand perspective, I feel like when you're trying to sell these things in, a lot of creators who have these communities, who have IRL events and these touch points, they're touching their own communities with other creators. So, you're also reaching potential users and their audience, but you're also reaching creators who you could then connect with or could then use your product or build on your platform, whatever that may be. So yeah, we've seen a lot of success with the IRL events. I feel like everyone's kind of craving that now, and those communities are coming back in a big way.
A big way. One of the best things we did this year was collaborate with a community called Creator Economy NYC that does monthly events for creators. And it's just allowed us to tap in such a specific way and have a high level of relevance with an audience that we want to connect. And like, we're not the expert or the authority in that conversation, but we're seen as enabling and empowering this community. Back to the question, I think in addition to digital communities, I think we're going to start to see more and more creator educators as well. John Uche is a former YouTube employee turned creator, and he did a talk at Vid Summit where he looked in the last decade at like the top 10 YouTubers, and the creators that had more educational content, their view count maintained like a steadiness versus the entertainment creators, their views dropped. And like, I do think creators are thinking about, what does my longevity look like? How do I create a lifestyle that's sustainable with this? And I think that if education is at the core of the content that they're creating, they're going to be able to do that. I also think brands should be thinking about educational content as well. How can we turn around and pull back the curtain on things that people want access to, that's like proprietary information that we have, and give game the way that, not gatekeep, like Brandon was talking about. I think that brands can play in that space too.
Yeah, we actually just launched a newsletter this year for creators that essentially gives creators use cases on Notion that are more relevant to them, beta opportunities, kind of like behind the fold look at the brand. And we're hoping to build a community on that too. So I feel like that definitely is in the same vein. But yeah, it's interesting. I feel like creators, they do want their ego to be stroked a little bit, like anyone, right? So I think giving them that little extra touch point and nurturing that relationship in that way is super important.
Yeah, I love that. I think I'm getting the time, but I do want to ask my last question. Is there a creator or an influencer that you guys are just loving right now, big, small, in the middle?
There's one.
Yourself, it could be.
No. There's one kind of, I think there's also a newer term, like creatorpreneur. His name is Matt Gray with an A. He does incredible things, actually for like content, I should say, for founders. He has a system called Founder OS. He has a newsletter. He now has a YouTube. He has, of course, like content literally everywhere. And like, there's no stone left unturned when it comes to like, how do I monetize my content? Everything from IRL experiences to consulting to courses. I just think he does it in such a smart way that when it's come time to like, cool, how could I grow this creator business and make it into something more viable everything from digital downloads to courses to like templates. It's just something I look towards, but I'm also kind of loving all of these green screen creators. One, because the bar is so low in a way that's so engaging. There's one that comes to mind. His name is, I want to say, oh, I'm going to butcher it, so I won't try. But he does basically recaps in health and fitness news. So it's like a super niche, and he's doing all the business recaps. Here's what Aloe is doing in the space. Here is what this brand is doing in the space. Here's what this brand is doing in the space. And we're all interested in this, but even on the business side, I was like, no one touched that from like such a niche community. So I just thought it was so smart.
Yeah, I have two as well. First is similar to Brandon. Jay Klaus is a creator. He has a company called Creator Science, and he's really breaking down like the nitty gritty of what it means to be a creator. How do you build a sustainable business? But what I love about how he's creating is his community is capped at 200 people very intentionally. Like he's not trying to scale to massive sizes, but he's able to build a multi-six-figure business off of a community of 200 people. And I think creators are always being thrown like more, bigger is better. And I don't necessarily think that's true. And he's a really nice counter narrative to that and actually gives the playbook for how to do that. The other creator that I am loving, his name is Josh O'Neill on TikTok. He's creating movies on TikTok. Like his content is insane. It's so refreshing that after like scrolling 50 times, you get something that you actually want to flip your camera and watch. So I'm loving him too.
That's awesome. These aren't traditional like creators you can follow, but one of our long-term partners is Creator Camp, which is a group of 4 creators turned entrepreneurs who are building this really awesome, inspiring community of what they're calling the future of the internet. And it's basically, you know, a big network of creators who are so talented. And I think this is a perfect example of creators as a very broad term. So they just we brought a group of 80 creators to Switzerland, and I highly suggest you all look up Creator Camp on Instagram. They created the most beautiful videos that honestly gave me like so much hope for the future of the internet, because it was a group of animators, musicians, you know, cinematographers, spoken word artists, people who make planners. Like it would like draw things. It was very inspiring, and I think it really did kind of open my eyes to, oh my gosh, there are so many creators on the internet, and these people have 500,000 to millions plus followers, but like their true passion is just creating art. So very inspiring.
I love that. All right. We're going to go follow all of those people. Well, thank you very much. I hope you guys learn, and you know, feel free to ask questions as you see us in the crowd after. Thank you.